Today's Manna. 가스펠라이프 철치 데니얼 김 목사가 보내드리는 시간입니다.
Hello to the friends and family of KCBS. My name is Daniel and welcome to today's Manna. In Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4 says this, Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And Deuteronomy 6 verse 6-7 says, These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. You know, most parents begin with a list. There's no lying. They say respect your elders. They say do your homework, and they also tell you to go to church. They also probably remind their children saying to not talk back. Maybe they also say things like say please and thank you, the list, that's not wrong, and the things really keep going. And I believe that these are really good things. I believe that these are necessary, but if you're honest with yourself, you know that a list alone can never change anyone's hearts. It can't change your heart, it can't change my heart, and not even your children's heart. Yet so much parenting, especially in the church world, it quietly collapses into a list management. We measure success by behavior. We feel like good parents when our kids are compliant and embarrassed when they're not. We correct loudly and affirm quietly. We major on what they did wrong and minor on who they are becoming. And then one day our child turns 16 or 22 and we discover that they followed the rules all those years, not because they loved what the rules pointed to, but because they feared what would happen if they didn't. And that is not the house that God asked us to build. Paul's instruction in Ephesians chapter 6 is short and brief, but devastating in its precision. He does not begin with saying, make sure your children obey. He begins with a warning to the parents, where he says, do not provoke your children to anger. I believe that this is a remarkable starting point. In a culture where children had virtually no rights and parents had virtually unchecked authority, Paul opens by protecting the child. He assumes that parents, even while having good meaning and loving and religious parents, are capable of provoking something destructive in their children. And he names it before he gets to the instruction. The word translated provoke in the Greek is called paraorgizo, to rouse to wrath, to embitter, to exasperate. And Paul is not talking to the normal friction of discipline. He's talking about a pattern, a way of relating that over time produces something in a child that is the opposite of what we want. Not obedience born of love, but resentment born of fear, shame, or the exhausting sense that they can never be enough. The parallel passage in Colossians chapter 3, verse 21 makes it even clearer. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. He says discouraged. You know, that word in the Greek means to lose heart, to go limp on the inside, to stop trying because the standard is always moving and the warmth is always conditional. This is a danger that Paul sees. And he sees it not in the obviously abusive parent, but in the religious and rule-focused parent who has confused the means with the end. And I believe that there are two ways to parent. You can manage a behavior or you can shepherd a heart. And both require structure. Both require boundaries. Both sometimes require consequences that are difficult for everyone in the room. The difference is not in the presence or absence of discipline. It is in the aim of the discipline and the spirit which it is carried out. The manager parent is primarily concerned with output. What does my child do? How do they appear? Are they performing at the level I expect? The manager parent reads every report card as a verdict on themselves. Every public misbehavior is a problem, and also it's a crisis. Every act of defiance is a threat to be neutralized. The parent is not necessarily cold. They may love their child deeply, but their love expresses itself primarily as correction, and their child learns to associate the parent's attention with something being wrong. And we need to pause here because the word grace is one of the most misused words in the Christian parenting conversation. Grace is not the absence of consequences. But I believe that grace is not letting things slide because confrontation is uncomfortable. Grace is not the parent who smiles warmly at every act of defiance and say, God loves you just as you are, while their child runs towards a cliff. Grace is the unearned, undeserved, relentless commitment to the good of another person, even when it costs you. In parenting, grace looks like this. You correct your child not to protect your reputation, but to protect their heart, to protect their character. You discipline in private when possible and restore quickly. You apologize when you're wrong because you are sometimes wrong. And your apology teaches them more about grace than 100 sermons. Which is why I want to invite you, as a parent, please build something strong. And build a house that will not shake. And build a house that is worth building.
지금까지 가스펠라이프 처치의 데니얼 킴 목사였습니다. 성경이나 예수 그리스도에 관해서 더 알기를 원하시는 분은 시카고 기독교 방송 전화 847-583 영원 구원으로 연락 바랍니다.